My fiancée threatened to cancel the wedding unless I sent my kids to boarding school to move in her brother. So I canceled the wedding instead. I'm a 38-year-old father of two kids, ages 10 and 12. I've been a single parent ever since their mother passed away a few years ago. Balancing work, household responsibilities, and raising them hasn't always been easy, but I'm proud of how we've built a warm, loving home. Then, about a year and a half ago, I met my fiancée at a mutual friend's gathering. She was outgoing and lively, and it felt like I'd found a companion who could understand and accept my family. At least, that's what I believed in the beginning. Things moved quickly. She bonded with my kids on a surface level, took them for ice cream, visited the park a couple of times. They were polite around her, though I sensed they were cautious. Maybe it was their way of protecting themselves. They lost their mother, and any new parental figure would be a big adjustment. Still, I thought we'd navigate it together if we ever decided to blend families permanently. A few months back, I proposed to her. At first, it felt right. She said yes, brimming with excitement, talking about wedding plans. She'd slipped through magazines, marking dresses, flowers, venues. But along the way, subtle signs of tension arose whenever we discussed how the house would function after marriage. She'd mentioned changes she wanted in the living arrangement, minor things at first. Maybe repaint the kids' bedrooms, rearrange furniture, store away some of the kids' belongings to declutter. I chalked it up to normal merging of two adults' tastes. Then, her brother came into the picture. A few weeks ago, she confided in me that he was having a rough time, lost his job, had some personal issues, and needed a place to crash temporarily. She asked if I'd consider letting him move in for a while once we were married. He's family, she'd say with pleading eyes. He just needs a fresh start. I was open to discussing it, though I wanted details. How long would he stay? How would we manage space? Would it disrupt my kids' routines? She brushed off my questions, insisting we could figure it out. But last weekend, everything changed. She sat me down in the living room, her face a storm of impatience. She said, "We have to talk about the kids' situation." My stomach nodded at that phrasing. She'd never called it a situation before. She laid out this bizarre ultimatum. Her brother needed a proper bedroom, not just a couch or an air mattress. My kids, according to her, already have each other and could be relocated to give the rest of us breathing room. When I pushed for clarity, she dropped the real bomb. She expected me to send my kids to a boarding school, out of the house entirely, so her brother could move in comfortably. I was stunned. My kids have bedrooms that reflect their personalities, their sense of home, a sanctuary they need to feel secure. Tearing them away to a boarding school, purely because her brother demanded a free bedroom, struck me as unthinkably harsh. I tried to reason with her, pointing out how traumatic such a move would be, how I wasn't about to exile my children from their own house. She shrugged, repeating that her brother was in a desperate situation, that it was for the best. As I sat there, reeling from the suggestion, my fiancée grew more insistent. "Think of the wedding," she said, leaning forward. "We'll start our new life with my brother under the same roof, and your kids can get a better education away from home. Isn't that what you want for them?" Her tone implied that sending them off was some grand favor to them, but I saw through it. I reminded her that my kids are already enrolled in local schools, have friends here, and we have a stable routine. She rolled her eyes, dismissing every concern. The conversation escalated. I asked how her brother's personal struggles justified uprooting my children. She retorted that since we'd marry, the house would be ours, so we should use the space as she saw fit. In other words, my kids, who'd lived here their entire lives, were suddenly a secondary priority behind her grown brother, who apparently wouldn't find a job or place of his own. The entitlement was staggering. Finally, she upped the stakes. "If you don't agree," she declared, "I'm canceling the wedding. I won't marry a man who won't put my family first." The words rang in my ears, thick with manipulation. I told her, shaking with anger, "My kids are my family. You can't ask me to toss them aside." She insisted it wasn't tossing them aside, but freeing them to have a boarding school experience. I almost laughed at the euphemism, but the situation was too serious for that. The next day, she repeated her threat. Either I commit to shipping my children off, or the wedding was off. Meanwhile, she made phone calls to her mother, to her father, telling them about how uncooperative I was. She tried to spin it as if I was blocking her brother from basic shelter. The stories I overheard on her phone calls were twisted. She painted me as a cruel stepfather figure who refused to help a desperate sibling. My kids, blissfully unaware, continued their normal routines: homework, after-school clubs, weekend soccer. Each time I looked at them, I felt a surge of protectiveness. The mere idea of them packing their bags to some distant boarding school, forced away from the home we built, made me furious. That's when the realization solidified. If my fiancée truly believed she could banish my kids so her brother could move in, we had no future together. I decided to try one last conversation, hoping she'd come to her senses. I explained how vital stability was for my children. I even asked if we could temporarily host her brother in a smaller, spare area, or help him find an apartment if finances allowed. She scoffed, claiming it wasn't good enough. He needs a real bedroom. Your kids don't. Hearing those words, I felt my respect for her evaporate. She then repeated her ultimatum: choose me and my brother or your kids. Your call. In that moment, it felt like a punch to the gut. The wedding was only a month away, with deposits paid and guests invited. But my kids came first, always. I never allowed them to be used as pawns or exiled from their home. With a heavy heart, I stood up and told her, I choose my children. Her face hardened. Fine. Wedding's canceled. And she marched off, slamming the door behind her. After she stormed out, I sank onto the couch, stunned at how abruptly the engagement crumbled. A swirl of emotions churned in my gut: anger, heartbreak, relief, all jostling for space. Part of me clung to the memory of our happier times, when I thought we'd form a supportive family. Yet the woman who demanded my kids be shipped off to boarding school was a far cry from the partner I imagined. Over the next few days, the fallout was intense. My fiancée spread her narrative to extended family and mutual friends, claiming I'd refused to help her brother, painting me as an uncaring monster. I fielded calls from her relatives scolding me for not making a small sacrifice. One even said, it's not a big deal, lots of kids go to boarding schools. The sense of entitlement coursing through that side of the family left me speechless. Did none of them see how bizarre it was to expect me to relocate my children for an adult man's convenience? Meanwhile, my own circle of friends and some relatives offered support. They knew my kids were everything to me. They found her ultimatum horrifying. A couple of them urged me to stand my ground, which I was determined to do. I told them that the wedding was canceled for sure. They expressed relief that I discovered her true colors before legally binding myself to someone who'd happily push away my kids. The tension mounted when my ex-fiancée demanded refunds for certain wedding expenses. She insisted I reimburse her for the deposit she'd made on the caterer, even though I'd already contributed a hefty portion to the venue. She threatened small claims court if I didn't comply. The petty drama was overshadowed by a bigger sense of betrayal. She had no regrets about giving me that ultimatum or trying to put her brother's comfort above my children's well-being. She only wanted to salvage her lost money. I consulted an attorney friend to clarify my obligations. He confirmed that typically, wedding deposits aren't legally recoverable if the wedding is canceled, unless there's a contract specifying refunds. He advised me to settle fairly, but not let her manipulate me again. So I offered to split the non-refundable deposits proportionally to what we each had contributed, hoping to end the matter. She flared up in indignation, claiming I should cover everything since I was the one who canceled. But I reminded her that it was her ultimatum. She gave me a choice between my kids or her, so I simply chose. After a lot of back and forth, she grudgingly accepted a partial settlement to cover her share. During this fiasco, my kids sensed a shift in the household. They asked why I seemed upset and why my fiancée hadn't been around. I gave them a gentle explanation. She wanted something that wasn't good for our family, so we decided not to get married. They seemed relieved more than anything else. My older child asked, "Does that mean we're not moving away?" I assured them they were staying right here in their rooms with me. They smiled in relief. That alone reinforced that I'd made the correct decision. The final confrontation happened a week later. My ex-fiancée swung by unannounced, demanding to pick up some personal items she'd left. She also insisted we talk like adults. I let her in, but kept a firm stance. She walked around, gathering random stuff, a few clothes, some personal documents. Then she turned to me, her voice low and accusatory. "You really threw away our future just because you couldn't compromise about the kids," she spat. I stared at her in disbelief. "They're not just the kids, they're my children. Your demand was beyond compromise. You asked me to send them away. so your brother could have their space. She tried once more to rationalize it. He's family. We had an obligation. I cut her off. My children are my top priority. If you can't understand that, we have nothing left to discuss. She tried a last-ditch emotional plea, swirling up tears. I loved you. I wanted a life with you. But you turned your back on me and my brother. I felt a sting, but I remained resolute. Love doesn't mean banishing my kids for your brother's comfort. That's not how a family works. Her tears dried up quickly when she saw I wasn't budging. She snatched her bag and stormed out, muttering curses under her breath. In the following days, I busied myself with notifying guests that the wedding was off. Some were confused. Others already heard rumors. A few tried to pry for details. I gave only a brief explanation. We had irreconcilable differences about living arrangements and my children's well-being. It wasn't worth airing all the dirty laundry. The deposit losses stung, but seeing the relief on my kids' faces was priceless. They no longer had to worry about being sidelined in their own home. My ex-fiancée's family kept up a barrage of texts and calls, a mix of threats and pleas. They accused me of humiliating them, of leaving her brother homeless. I told them calmly that her brother was an adult, capable of finding a job or a modest apartment. My children, in contrast, were innocent kids who deserved stability. The entitlement in their messages, like it was my job to solve the brother's life, was staggering. Eventually, I blocked several of them to maintain my sanity. In the end, I took a quiet satisfaction in how the situation resolved. Sure, I was disappointed that the relationship I thought was heading for a loving marriage turned out to be so warped. But the sense of relief was stronger. My children remained where they belong, in the home I've kept for them. And I dodged a lifetime with someone who put me in impossible binds, demanding I choose her brother over my own kids. There's a lesson in all this. Love can blind you to a person's real character, but it's crucial to see how they treat your children. The moment someone tries to cast them aside, you know exactly where your priorities lie. I canceled the wedding, and although it cost me financially and emotionally, I'm walking away with my family intact. That alone proves it was the right call. And if my ex-fiancée wants to label me as the bad guy, so be it. My children will never doubt their father put them first, and that's the only vindication I truly need.